Online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com. Legends Casino Hotel in Toppenish, within winning distance. Audi Wilsonville, offering unmatched service to help you find the perfect car. Online at AudiWilsonville.com. Laurelhurst Market, more than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. By Unitas Community Credit Union. Join the team at Unitas Community Credit Union to help you reach your financial goals. And by Langdon Farms Golf Club. There's no better course in the Northwest for year-round golf. Book your tee time at langdonfarms.com. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Buckley and Will Ortner. The Ducks Postgame Scoreboard Show on 1080 The Fan.
For the sixth time in a row, a victorious edition of the Pacific Office Automation Post-Game Scoreboard Show. Your number 3 Oregon Ducks winners, 32-31 over number 2 Ohio State. Ryan Buckley here, along with Will Ortner, and behind the glass, Jordan Schultz. Fellas, what a freaking day. From start to finish, from before dawn, 6 a.m. in the quad with game day, to the very last second of Will Howard not getting down in time for a timeout. A total thrill ride. I'm almost at a loss for words, but I have to find some because we're going to talk about this thing for like an hour and a half. We're going to have a whole bunch of people. Dusty Harrah, Andy Dirt Johnson, Anthony Newman will be coming up as well. There's so much to get to, but Will, I'll start with you. Just initial thoughts, reactions, as you watch this thing play out. What are you feeling right now in this moment about this Oregon Ducks team?
Well, I think it shows you that you can't judge a team based on what happens in September. Like, we all have these preconceived notions going into the year of what a team should look like. And then when they don't look like that, especially early on, we instantly go, oh my God, the sky is falling. This is not the team that we thought they were. And you can even throw my hat into this a little bit. I was nervous going into this game for the Ducks. I thought that there were some things that they were going to have to prove, specifically on that offensive line. You were going to have to prove that you could run the football and that you could keep Dylan Gabriel upright. Guess what? You didn't allow a single sack to that Ohio State defensive line. You ran for over 100 yards in this game with Jordan James. They proved, and the Ducks proved, I think, one, that they can win a big game under Coach Lanning, but they also proved that you need to reevaluate where you have them week after week after week, because it's clear that there's a reason why this team was ranked 3rd at the beginning of the year, and there will be a reason why they are ranked 1st or 2nd when the polls come out on Sunday.
The hype train left the station this season before the team was ready for it, too. It was before they had their bags packed. It was before they had things buttoned up, and there is still a lot of meat left on the bone. There is still a lot for this team to figure out, and we will get to some of that a little bit later on. But I'll be honest, Will, as I'm driving in here in the third quarter, I'm preparing to do an entirely different show with you because there was so much that was left out there that it just felt like this is going to be really hard to overcome. And I think that's where I start giving credit at the very top, because you know Dan Lanning has been hearing it for years now. He can't win a big game. What's his signature win? He can't beat a rival. Oh, he finally beat Oregon State? Great. They're not very good now. Like, the narrative is out there. Dan Lanning can't win a big game. He did not get the best effort from his team today, and he still beat the number 2 team in the country. For Dan Lanning to turn this effort in and to find a way to will his team to victory despite those missteps, I think, to me, says a ton about his impression on this program. I think this is career defining for him.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to go quite far to say career defining. I think it proves, and it
maybe validating.
There we go, because it puts out the narrative.
Defining is too strong, but it validates what you think you have in him.
Right, because what was the saying all offseason? Why is Oregon rated so highly? You've never won a big game under Lanning.
Show me. Well, you haven't
look
done it
at
yet.
His rivalry games. Look at when he's played a top-tier opponent that had a quarterback, right? He has all these losses, and they're all really close losses. And it felt like at different points in this game, all of the mistakes and all of the ghosts from previous big game losses all came up again. You missed an extra point. You then chase it and go for 2, and then you don't get it. You miss a field goal. You have issues where you don't challenge what should have been an interception. You're not aggressive in that spot. And it felt like, oh man, here it comes. You don't score in the red zone. Instead, you get 3 instead of 6. Now Ohio State has the ball. They have 2 minutes. They're going to drive. This feels like this is where they rip your heart out. And in the biggest moments, your defense came up big for you, and it just felt like Oregon finally had to go through and push through all of the negative issues that they've had in the past to finally have that success. And now they know they can win the big one. Because guess what? This isn't going to be the only time you see this Ohio State team.
Nope.
You're going to see them at least one more time, and they're going to be loaded for bear, ready to come after you. There is a lot of growth that you can make, but winning college football games are extremely hard, especially when you're playing the number 2 team in the country. Everyone should be celebrating tonight responsibly and then getting ready for Purdue on Sunday.
Everyone should be celebrating tonight. That includes those of you listening out there. This is one for the ages for the program. This was billed as the biggest game at Autzen Stadium in the history of the stadium. People built it as the biggest regular season game for Oregon, period. And they were underdogs. They were talked about as pretenders. We hadn't seen it. We didn't have a lot of reference points for both teams. The best one we had going in probably was Boise State for Oregon and Iowa for Ohio State, and even that, still really tough to judge. How is this team going to match up against another top-tier team? And we needed to see these guys head-to-head to do it. And I think what I learned right away is that both of these teams have the legit personnel to make a deep, deep run this season. The question is going to be, who's going to execute? Who's going to outsmart the other guy? Who's going to outcoach? Who's going to make fewer mistakes? Who's going to find ways to create more takeaways? And that pendulum swung back and forth all game. And a lot of the time, it felt like it was swinging away from the Ducks. And then somehow, some way, again, I'm not even sure how they pulled it out of the fire, but Dan Lanning and company did. They pushed the right buttons at the right times, eventually got it done. Schultze, I know that you live and die with this team, and your heart rate was probably a little bit like a Chihuahua with an espresso. What was going on for you during that game?
Well, to pull back the curtain just a little bit, as soon as you came in the door, you were screaming of elation. I came out chest bumped you. I don't think I've been as excited as a sports fan since like when the Seattle Mariners made the playoffs for the first time in 20 years.
You pulled your calf during that, didn't you?
I did. Well, no, that was when Alvarez hit the game-winning walk-off.
I knew you pulled the calf.
Yeah, and I jumped, and it was out of frustration, and then, I pulled my calf. No, but this is really the feeling of shaking off like that Oregon can't win the big game after losses to Auburn, after a loss to Ohio State in the big championship game, after an early season loss to LSU. I was at Michigan in 2004 versus Oregon at Autzen Stadium.
Beautiful.
It was only those kinds of teams, like just almost like the elite, but not quite there yet. It was the Michigans, the USCs of the world that Oregon had their big games against. So it was just such, I'd say, an unmatched feeling, honestly, ever. Really, now that I'm sinking into it, of Oregon getting that win. And props to Dylan Gabriel. We saw big game Dylan Gabriel today. There was nothing that I saw from him that I had any questions about. Really nice to see after last week.
Go ahead.
I think the most impressive part, and I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No, you're good.
I think the most impressive part about this victory is how few mistakes Ohio State truly made.
Yes.
The fumble was forced by you. Derek Harmon made one of the more incredible plays that I have seen all year, and it won't get enough love.
I was hoping to get to that with you. That was a man's football play.
It's an unbelievable play. He crosses the face of the guard that is coming over to block him, knocks his hands down. Then he has the agility at 320 pounds to bend back inside, hit the running back so hard that he knows he's going to go down, yet still be aware enough to take the ball and rip it completely out of his hands so that you have the ball, and the officials can't say, well, we can't give you the ball because we can't definitively see you take it beforehand. When do you see anyone make a play like that from that position?
I don't know that I ever have.
It's an unbelievable play by him.
I don't think I've ever watched a player from that position of the field just strip the running back. I've seen guys like a Jadeveon Clowney go through and blow up the running back. I've seen guys from a second or third level target that with some time to think about it and calculate that. I've never seen someone from that position do that.
And even on the Jadeveon Clowney one, they didn't block him.
Right.
They missed him.
Yeah.
They didn't not block Derek Harmon. Derek Harmon defeated that block. It was incredible. The other turnover that Ohio State has, your kicker somehow, some way is like, guess what, coach? At some point during the week, at some point during the season, he went up to Lanning and said, I can kick this ball really hard at that guy, and I will be able to hit them, and then hopefully it bounces our way. And you get it. The biggest mistakes that Ohio State made was forced by you. It wasn't Ohio State losing this game. Now, you can have your complaints about, if you're an Ohio State fan, what is Will Howard doing? How do you jump off sides?
Sure, they're going to have things that bother them,
times?
but they didn't have nearly as many missteps as Oregon
The
did.
mistakes that Ohio State had, or at least when they turned the ball over, was forced by you. And I think that's going to be the most impressive thing in this win, because that's something that you can hang your hat on and say, we can do to any team. We made them lose. We forced those turnovers. It wasn't them being sloppy. It was us making great plays.
Well, the Oregon Ducks offense asserted themselves in a number of ways that I thought was impressive throughout the afternoon. And before we get to the discussion on that, I do want to get to our Ducks Game Day secret score.
Ducks Game Day secret score.
The Ducks Game Day secret score, Will, is 496. That is 496 yards that the Oregon Ducks put up on the number one defense in the country that came to Autzen today. You don't need to remember what that number is all about. Just remember that number of 496 when you hear the cue to call in the 7 a.m. hour of Monday morning's Dirt and Sprague. And if you text in with that number and your text is selected, you could win the $100 gift card to Laurelhurst Market, more than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. Will, the offense seemed like they did a lot of what they wanted throughout the night.
Yep.
There were some familiar faces getting the run that we expected, but also some big people stepping up in moments that we didn't necessarily expect. And I want to start with Evan Stewart, because even before Trayshawn Holden got himself ejected from the game, Stewart was making plays.
Yes, he was.
And he had a nice game against Boise, but otherwise was kind of hit and miss, kind of hard to find, seeming like he just wasn't getting the same targets and the same volume as Tez. Tez was fine tonight, but Evan Stewart showed up and showed you why he was so coveted in the transfer portal. Mm-hmm. He gave that secondary fits, and it wasn't just getting open and catching easy passes. He made tough plays on really good balls. I was really impressed with Evan Stewart.
His touchdown catch, where he's got the defender draped all over him, it couldn't be better coverage. Some might argue it was a defensive PI, and he still gets one hand on the ball and gets one foot down. It's an incredible catch by him. And I was talking about this in the morning with Luke when I was sinning and Satan. It was, will they use Tez as a decoy in this game? Because what have we been complaining about, or at least mentioning the last couple weeks? Tez has a disproportionate amount of targets compared to everyone else.
Yeah, he had, going into this game tonight, he had more than twice as many catches as anyone else on the team.
Right, and it wasn't necessarily because, these guys are dropping it or Gabriel's having bad throws.
No, and Holden and Stewart had some nice games here and there, but like Tez is at like 43 catches and the next guy's at like 19.
Every game Tez was open, or Tez was finding a way to get the ball. So it was a worry of, are you locking in on Tez? And so that left Stewart with a lot of one-on-one opportunities in this game, and he beat that secondary. And that's a really good secondary at Ohio State. There are multiple projected top NFL guys. Obviously, Downs is going to be a first round. There's a couple other guys on that defense that they talk about as possible first round, definitely day 2 guys. And so to see Evan Stewart run past them and beat them, on slants, but then be able to beat them vertically. He wasn't a one-trick pony today. He opened up the offense, and then they had to give more credit to Evan Stewart. So now you have to have a safety over the top. Well, that starts opening up the middle of the field for Ferguson. That opens things up for Tez Johnson. That allows the offensive line to get plus numbers, so now you can run the football more effectively. Evan Stewart having a monster first half is what opened up this offense, and it's why you went out and got him in the portal. You had 2 big grabs in the portal this year. You had Harmon and you had Stewart. And in the and Gabriel, 3. We're going to throw all 3 of them. Guess what? It still fits. All 3 of them showed up big time in this game. And that's why you go in the portal and you go grab these guys. That's what Dabo misses, and that's what Lanning isn't missing.
It was, and then, of course, for Evan Stewart to perform that well, it was something that I had been hoping for and asking for the last couple weeks. If Dylan Gabriel could just hit a couple more deep shots, how much it could open up what they would be able to do. And there were times against Boise when he had touchdowns that he wasn't able to hit. There was even last week against Michigan State, there was a time that he had Tez open and he underthrew him just a little bit.
He missed Tez in this game.
But his ability to deliver a couple deep balls, a couple long shots today, felt like opened up things for Jordan James and for the run game. And again, I come back to that number of 496. Oregon did not play perfect football, but yet they had their way with what was billed as the top defense in the country. So who gets the credit for that? It does feel collective, but how much is Will Stein? How much is the guys up front? How much is just the collection of all those parts? What did you see?
Look, I'm a true fat guy at heart. It's the offensive line. They held up. They didn't give up a single sack in this game, and you ran for 155 yards on the ground. So you allowed your quarterback to stand in the pocket and find open receivers, and you also got that run game going. So Ohio State couldn't all of a sudden go into their heavy blitz package, which is what they want to do. They want to get you away from being able to run the football so they can scheme up all these crazy blitzes so they can get sacks in the backfield. They want you to become one-dimensional, and that offensive line, which had gotten a lot of hate, and they'd even gotten hate the last couple weeks when they didn't necessarily deserve it because of how poorly they performed the first couple of weeks. I am going to ride with my big uglies up front. They came out and they had one hell of a game, and that allowed your offense to do everything else around it.
Well, we need to talk to a number of people on this program tonight. It's going to start with one Anthony Newman, who is on his way back from the game right now, but we also want to hear from you. You can reach us on the Vancouver Ford text line, 503-8646-FAN. If you're at the game, if you're with friends, if you're at home on your couch, let us know. I want to know what your experience was like. It's a special night to be a Ducks fan, and we want to revel in it with all of you. So hit us up on the Vancouver Ford text line, 503-8646-FAN. Also, our YouTube stream is live at 1080 The Fan. You can reach us there. But we're going to get to Anthony Newman coming up next. First, we'll toss it over to Schultze, who has the game day traffic and weather brought to you every 10 minutes by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com.
Thanks, Buck. It's looking pretty heavy, as expected, out of Eugene. A bit of a weird one, though. It took people a while, obviously, celebrating the win over Ohio State to get out of Autzen Stadium. Seeing traffic pretty backed up I-5 northbound as you get onto I-5 pretty much the whole way out of Eugene up past Coburg Road. There is, right at Coburg Road, looks like a Smoky there and a possible Smoky around the Albany area as well. 60 degrees in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 47. Tomorrow, it's sunny with a high of 75.
I'm Leif Hansen, owner of Leif's Auto Collision Centers. We've been helping with a documentary covering the auto insurance claims industry. If
This is the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. The number 3 Oregon Ducks victorious this evening over the number 2 Ohio State Buckeyes, a thriller at Autzen Stadium, 32-31 the final. Will Howard trying to get into field goal range on the final play, unable to get a timeout off before time expired. Ducks win despite a whole bunch of meat left on the bone this evening. An absolute thrill ride. We're still unpacking it all, and now happy to do it with our good friend and Ducks legend, Anthony Newman. And Anthony, from your perspective as a player, you've played massive games at Autzen Stadium. You've covered massive games at Autzen Stadium. You've played massive games in the NFL. Of all the experiences of big game feels, I know you're coming back from Autzen right now. Where does today stack up, and what was special about it to you?
Oh, that was one of the best games I've ever watched, or meaning as a Duck fan. You're watching your team. You're out there, they're balling. They're going back and forth with a very good football team. The fans, the Duck family, it's ridiculous. I mean, that stadium was probably one of the loudest stadiums I've ever heard. I've been to a lot of stadiums. I mean, the stadium that I played with the New Orleans Saints in that dome, that was loud. You know, it was hard for an offense to hear, and we were playing on defense trying to make those calls. We couldn't hear anything, and it was loud. This Autzen Stadium outdoors with only what? I think there were 60,000 people.
Yeah,
that was a record,
new Autzen record.
Yes,
60,000 and change.
It was unbelievable, and it was back and forth. It was a football game, and that's what you do. You battle. You deal with adversity. You keep fighting to the end, to the last 6 seconds. And you know what? In that last play, when Will Howard was trying to find the star receivers, 3 of them will be playing in the NFL. Okay, and they had a heck of a night. And that last play, the receivers were covered up. That's why he had to run. They were covered, and that was a great job.
I know that the receivers had a heck of a night. You're talking about Smith and Ibukum over there for Ohio State. But, Anthony, when I was watching the game, I felt like Oregon did a great job in the secondary of not giving up the true explosive backbreaker. What were you noticing from the secondary, and how were they treating those 2 wide receivers all game?
Exactly right. Don't get behind the defense. Keep it in front. Make Ohio State have like a 12-play drive, which they did. And that's fine, because in those 12 plays, you may make a mistake. You're using up some clock, but you're not giving up those explosion plays, those plays where, oh, come on, stay behind the receiver. That didn't happen. Now, again, they were getting open. I mean, those guys, they're big receivers. I mean, Jeremiah Smith, he's 6'3", 220, and he's a freshman. I'm thinking he's a true freshman. What was he doing in high school in Miami? Who was guarding him in high school? It's ridiculous. The kid was a monster. I saw him on the sideline. I'm going, there's no way that kid's a freshman. And those guys, they ran great routes. The offensive line for Ohio State did a good job sometimes of protecting Will Howard. But, you know, it's a team game, and you got to play 4 quarters. You got to play 4 quarters of football to the clock strikes 0, and that's what Oregon did.
So, Anthony, when it comes down, there's so many things we can pick apart from this game, and obviously there's going to be some negatives that we dive into too, but that's not what tonight is about. When you look back on this game tomorrow, next week, a year from now, years from now, and say, I remember that day that I was at Autzen Stadium for the top 5 matchup against Ohio State, whose performance or what moment is going to stand out to you most from that 60 minutes of football?
Dillon Gabriel. He's the quarterback of the Oregon Ducks. Touches the ball every offensive snap, played a great game. He played like a champion, like a veteran, like he was the leader out there. He was the leader out there. He was calm. He was cool. He was collected. You made a mistake, didn't worry about it. It was all on to the next play. That's a champion right there. That's a guy who's played a lot of football. And I talked about this during the pregame. I said it's going to come down to the quarterback positions. And I think Dillon Gabriel is the better quarterback. I think he can do more, and he did more. I mean, he ran well, had the nice touchdown run, threw the ball, no interceptions, protected the football, and it was calm. Made some mistakes, but didn't worry about it. You're always watching the guys when they make mistakes. What do they do the next play? What happens the next series? That is so important in football because you got about 60 plays. And if you're dwelling on one play, a play that you messed up on, then you're lost. You're done for the whole game. And that wasn't Dillon Gabriel. He kept moving forward with any mistakes that he made, and then he was a leader for the team, and that's what you want.
Anthony, Obviously, there was big breaking news on Thursday all over the message boards that Jordan Birch had gotten hurt. There was a will he, won't he play? Obviously, he didn't play in this game, and you saw a lot of D linemen step up. How do you think that they played, and what were they able to do to stop this Ohio State rushing attack?
Well, they played great. You know, the Oregon's defense coordinators and coaches, they rotate that defensive line all the time. And sometimes, even realistically, think about this. Jordan Birch has really only showed up the last 2 games. Even though he was playing, he didn't really show anything yet. You know, in the last 2 games, okay, there's the Jordan Birch we're looking for. Now, there's a lot of rotation. Sometimes you see Jordan Birch on the sideline. Like, well, he's not even in the game. Oregon, hey, they were ready for that. It was the next man up. Now, as a coach, you're saying the next man up, but you're going, oh, man, my main dude is not playing? What's going on? It's about the supporting cast. The people around him, the people that will step in for Jordan Birch, and the 10 other players that are on the field have to make plays. They have to play great football, you know, mistake-free football, fly around to the ball, relentless pursuit to the football, and that's what happened tonight.
Yeah, I heard one of the players talking in the postgame with Dusty Harrah about, you know, I just know that my brother's got my back and I got theirs. If I take care of my 111th out there, like, we're going to be good. And I feel like there are guys that understand, like, yeah, there's going to be an absence with Jordan Birch not being there that's going to be felt, but there's enough dudes who if they just go out there and do your job, you're going to be okay. And I think we saw that collective unit pull that off today. And there were times today, Anthony, where I wasn't sure that the Ducks were going to end up on the right side of this ball game tonight. But now that we have seen them go toe-to-toe with another heavyweight, how has your expectation for the team changed after this victory, or has it?
Well, you know, it's like, hey, they went against some guys that are going to be playing in the league. And then Oregon has some guys that could be playing in the league. So you know that they can match up with any team in the country. That's what that proved tonight. Now, there's a lot of football left. You're going to celebrate this win tonight. Big win, okay? But the season's not over. You got a lot of football left. You got to learn from your mistakes in this football game and move forward because you will see them again. And you're going to have to do the same thing, you know, the next time when you see these guys. I mean, they're a tough team to beat. They're well coached. They have a lot of dudes, and they're a smart football team. Can you do it again? I mean, you did it the first time. You found a way to win this close game. You've been battle tested. Can you keep doing it? And that's what we're looking for.
Not to take away the joys from this win, Anthony, you've played and won a lot of big games. You've coached and won a lot of big games. What do the Ducks have to do starting tomorrow to not let a Vanderbilt-Alabama situation happen on Friday when they go to Purdue to take on the Boilermakers?
No disrespect for Purdue, but they're doo-doo. So I don't know. They're not going to do anything. It won't be Purdue. That's going to be the hiccup. I had to say that.
Are you calling them Purdue?
They're struggling. But you're right. They have to celebrate tonight. You enjoy the win. It's a great win. I mean, you go out tonight, you know, be safe, have a good time. And then tomorrow, okay, it's all about the next game. It's all about. Let's back up. It's all about correcting the mistakes you made in this last game, and then you go on to the next game and you take care of business. Be a professional. Again, you haven't won anything yet, right? You just won a football game.
Yep.
That's all you didn't win the conference title. You didn't win a national championship. You just won a football game. There's a lot more games to be played.
There are a lot more games to be played. There's a lot more for this team to clean up, and there's a lot more about this win for us to digest, and we will do that with Anthony on Monday night for Ducks Roundtable. Anthony, get home safe and enjoy this fantastic Ducks win.
Hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That is the Ducks' great Anthony Newman, legendary defensive back and NFL vet. You can hear him with us on Monday after primetime from 7 to 8 as the three of us plus Anthony will do the Ducks Roundtable show. Coming up next, still plenty for us to get to from this game, including some more of the unsung heroes. There were some big names stepping up today that we may have expected, but also some maybe less significant or smaller ones that stuck up too. Big moments that turned into a big victory. We will break it all down coming up next on the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show on 1080 The Fan. But first, we toss it over to Schulte with the Victorico's traffic and weather. You can make your order at Victoricos online for your game day celebration in store, or pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thanks, Buck. Looking at very heavy traffic, but pretty expected, of course, out of Eugene. I-5 northbound, getting out of that area looking pretty red, and then a little bit yellow after you get out of the Eugene immediate location. Probably an extra 25 to 30 minutes trying to get out of the city. A couple of Smokies there, and then also on I-5, a couple of Smokies once you get to the Albany area as well. 58 in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 47. Tomorrow, sunny at a high of 75.
This is the day of the big sale at your gift shop.
Welcome in.
Ducks football, 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. The Oregon Ducks winners tonight in the marquee matchup of the season to date. 32-31, the Ducks beat the Buckeyes in the biggest game in Autzen Stadium history. It was back and forth. It was heart-stopping at times, but ultimately the Ducks come away with one of the most memorable victories in the history of the program. And we're going to continue to digest it here on the post-game show. We'll get to Andy Dirt Johnson and Dusty Harrah coming up, but I want to talk with you, Will, a little bit more just about your analysis of how this all came to be, because we'll get to the point later where we talk about all the things the Ducks did to kind of shoot themselves in the foot and put themselves in a spot where it was going to be rough to pull one out, but they found a way. And so I want to keep going back to the people who deserve credit for this, because today it felt like it was such a collective effort from so many people. Right. And I think one of the places that I want to start, want to ask what you saw was with the coordinators. I worried this week going in if Oregon would be at a coordinator disadvantage just from an experience standpoint. I thought Chip Kelly against Tosh Lupoi. Tosh has been great for us. Fantastic recruiter. Been really great with what he's done with our D-line, but Chip is a pro. Chip is aces. Chip is a top OC for a reason. And then I just thought about Will Stein, again, just young, hasn't played or hasn't coached in many of these big spots going against the Jim Knowles defense, who's been around the block. He's played in these games before, and I thought both of these coordinators, maybe they didn't have a perfect game, but I thought they did an exceptional job getting the most out of their personnel on defense. You mentioned earlier, making sure that there weren't big plays, getting behind the entire defense, figuring out a way to keep things in front of them while also coming up with some stops. But just from a coaching perspective, what did you see today, X's and O's standpoint?
The biggest thing for me, I think, is how this defense handled a sudden adversity that you didn't expect. You expected to have Jordan Burch going into this game, and all of a sudden on Thursday, he gets hurt, right? And instead of burning everything, oh, we're in trouble, the sky is falling, what does Lupoi do? Well, he turns to his younger players. He turns to Uyunglele. He turns to Tatum Tuioti, and he says, hey, we have to put you in a position to where you can be successful. And I knew going into this game, and a lot of other talking heads had talked about this, but Chip had left a lot of Will Howard's running ability and read option ability on the table because he didn't need it against other teams, but he knew he was going to need it against this team. And consistently, what Howard did and what Kelly did is they would look to attack the young defensive linemen of the Ducks. And the reason they were doing this is because they wanted to make them look at Howard, see, hey, there's the quarterback. He's got the ball, big and juicy. I can charge after him. Now I've left my gap, and Howard can hit a shovel pass underneath. Or that allows him to step into a throw on a slant over to Ibukum, right? Or whatever they had set up around it. And play in, play out. Tatum and Uyunglele did not fall for that. They did their job. Now, did that necessarily mean that they got a lot of tackles, especially in Tuioti's case? No, right? You look at Tuioti's stat line, 3 tackles, 1 solo. A lot of people who didn't watch that game are going to go, who cares? Why are you talking about Tatum Tuioti? Tatum Tuioti did his job and trusted that the other Ducks would do theirs and stop Howard, and they did play after play after play. And then Mateo Uyunglele gets the nice little cheap sack where he slides down, he gets to touch him.
Sure.
Right?
But yeah, I feel you, though, because it felt like the kind of game where, as I was watching it, I kept thinking what a great job the defensive line was doing, keeping containment, getting pressure, making Howard uncomfortable, and they weren't racking up big sacks tonight. I mean, like you had one. You had one where he fell down, but they absolutely affected the game, and I think that's where, as a fan, we need to hear from someone like you who could appreciate or kind of paint the picture for us of just how impressive it was, even though you're not going to see it in the numbers. And then offensively, what did you think just about Will Stein's game plan and the way that he used his different tools that he had at his disposal?
I love that Stein didn't give up on the run game. I felt like this would have been an easy spot, especially when Ohio State comes out and scores right away and kind of takes the crowd out of it. Then you go 3 and out really quickly and you have to punt the ball back to Ohio State. It could have been very easy in that moment for Stein to go, well, we got to throw, we got to get a big play, got to do. No, what does he do? He trusts his offensive line. And what I really liked is he was letting Jordan James get into space on those quick boundary side tosses. So all that he's doing there is he's having his left tackle pull out and around. He's trusting Ferguson to have a down block. And it's essentially a stretch play with a pitch. So it's a true pin and pull down block, get the offensive lineman out and moving. The left tackle did a fantastic job of just letting the linebacker choose where he wants to be. You want to be outside? That's fine. I'm going to take you to the stands. You want to be inside? That's fine. I'm going to pin you inside. And then Jordan James did an amazing job of reading that and then running up into the second and third levels and then lowering his shoulder and running through the secondary of Ohio State. How many times do you see Caleb Downs get ran over? That doesn't happen, but Jordan James was doing it time in and time out. But that's Will Stein understanding what kind of personnel he has, how he can attack that Ohio State defense and out-leverage them to a spot, and then trusting that his athletes will make the play. Whenever they needed a big play, I felt like it, especially when it came to being on the ground, it was off of some sort of pin and pull where you could get those offensive linemen, specifically your left tackle, out in space and then let Jordan James do the rest.
Want to get to some of your Vancouver Ford fan text line thoughts as well. One person mentioning that one play that's not talked about enough is the botched extra point attempt in the first quarter. Ohio State could have easily ran that all the way back for 2 points, and that would have potentially decided the game. Absolutely. There were things that both of these teams did, points left out there, and man, Oregon was lucky that they got away with one there, because after you made the mistake of not being able to get the hold down, you almost made that mistake a whole lot worse by just gifting them with 2 points. And credit to the guys who were behind that play that chased down, I think it was Ransom who grabbed that ball. I'm not sure who for Ohio State, but really important that they stopped that from happening. Also, one person saying that they aged 10 years in a matter of 4 hours tonight. I said something similar at halftime. I think I tweeted it, that I felt like I went through an entire season's worth of emotions in just 30 minutes of football. That there was just so much going on to process.
I'll tell you this right now. If you're a Duck fan, you should probably go get your physical. Go get checked up. If you need to go get cholesterol pills, or
I need to
else.
really go to the real doctor, not the football doctor. But
no,
Good God.
go to a real doctor, one that has an MD in their name, not in their Twitter handle, like I do.
Blood pressure okay?
Yeah, go get checked out, because the way this Duck team is playing, unfortunately, you're going to be in a lot of these games. And I say unfortunately tongue-in-cheek, because you have a really good football team that, as long as you take care of business, you'll be playing for a Big Ten championship. You could possibly be playing for a bye going into the playoffs. Yeah. You could be playing in a quarter, in a semi, in a final. This is a really good football team. There is a lot of improvement and room for improvement for this team, which you want, because it's October. No one's ever won a national championship on October. They've always won it in December and in January. You have a team that has the potential to do that if they can continue to improve and, of course, stay healthy. So prepare for that. Maybe go get a physical. Go get checked up by your doctor. Take your medicine if you need it.
Well, the other thing that this game does, this win does in the broad view, and maybe it's a little bit funny to frame it this way, but it really gives you some breathing room in the whole playoff situation, because
it does.
This is the type of game that a year ago might have been punching your ticket to the four, or keeping your hopes of making it to the 14 playoff alive. Right now, this allows you a hiccup. Like you're probably, obviously you're on the inside track for the Big Ten championship game, but even if you were now to stumble, let's say against Michigan and Wisconsin, you can still find a path. This game, I want to say all but locks you into the 12-team playoff, unless something horrific happens.
I wouldn't go that far. What I would say that this does is it puts you in a spot to where you can guarantee it later in November.
Sure.
That is what I would say. Because the minute that you start saying, well, now we're in the playoffs.
I shouldn't say locked in, but wiggle room. It gives you it gives you a loss that you didn't expect is okay now.
It gives you some freedom. Because I'll tell you right now, obviously this Ohio State team isn't out, but you know who said that same thing 2 weeks ago? Alabama.
Yeah.
And if Alabama had lost to South Carolina today, I don't know that Alabama gets into the 12-team playoff, and that's if they run the table the rest of the way, because that's a very difficult schedule. So I think we see the 12-team playoff, and then we just look and, oh, well, they've won 2 big games. They're going to be fine. You're probably going to be fine. But Illinois is no slouch.
Nope.
Michigan is no slouch. You're going to go to Wisconsin, and you're going to have to deal with Wisconsin November weather. And then let's call a spade here. Yeah, it's not the same UW team as last year.
Still a rival.
It's a rivalry game, and it's a UW team that nothing would mean more to them than ruining your season. You still got a long, long, long way to go. But I had a college football coach when I played at Central Washington that used to call it Rocktober. You got to rock October to play meaningful games in November.
Yep.
And right now, that's what you've did. You've put yourself in the driver's seat. You control your own destiny. The rest of the teams out there, they don't necessarily control their own destiny. And right now, I think you have a legitimate argument to say we should be the number 1 team in the country. And that's got to feel pretty damn good.
We'll talk about that and a whole lot more coming up with Andy Dirt Johnson. One more text here says, how about a little respect for West Coast football? I think we proved we can not only hang with, but beat the big boys. Go Ducks. I think there is something especially validating about this win because everyone's been talking about now they have the horses to do it. Now they have the personnel to win this type of game, but they still needed to go out and do it. They've done it. I want to hear what Andy Dirt Johnson has to say about it. We'll do that coming up next. But first, we'll toss it back over to Schulte with the game day traffic and weather brought to you every 10 minutes by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com.
Appreciate it, Buck. We're still looking at very heavy traffic out of Eugene. I-5 northbound, pretty sluggish, like about a stop-and-go drive all the way to Coburg Road, getting out of Eugene. 2 Smokies there, and then the slowing has made it up to Albany as well. Beware, looks like some brake tapping through that area, and some people trying to get up on 99E northbound as well, getting up to I-5 that way. Right now in Portland, 58 degrees. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 47. Tomorrow, sunny with a high of 75.
We're back with a complete recap of today's game.
Gabriel snapping back to throw. Looks left in the corner and catch. Touchdown. Yes! Stewart with a grab.
With the coaches and players you want to hear, your feedback on the contest, scores and highlights from across the country, post-game traffic reports, and analysis from your game day crew. This is the Ducks post-game scoreboard show on 1080 The Fan. Oregon Ducks football on 1080 The Fan is brought to you by Coors Light, Pacific Office Automation, Mods PDX, Victor Rico's Mexican Food, Legends Casino Hotel in Toppenish, by Zoom Care, Bellagio's Pizza, Multnomah County Behavioral Health Division, Audi Wilsonville, Laurelhurst Market, by Unitas Community Credit Union, and by Langdon Farms Golf Club. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Buckley and Will Ortner. The Ducks post-game scoreboard show on 1080 The Fan.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. Ryan Buckley, Will Ortner, Jordan Schultz here with you. On a victorious evening, the Ducks now 6-0, 32-31. They beat the Ohio State Buckeyes tonight, the number 3 team in the country, certainly moving up at least to number 2, possibly to number 1. And maybe that's where we'll start this conversation with Andy Dirt Johnson, who joins us now. You can hear him on Dirt and Sprague Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. And Dirt, when you start your show on Monday, will the Ducks be the number 1 team in the land?
Yeah, I mean, they're in the conversation. It's probably between them and Texas at this point.
Right, and Texas looked good in their win today.
And they look. It sounded like I missed most of it, so I know it sounded like they look good. How many more undefeated teams are there even left? What Penn State survived? I had about 30 text messages about that, so I can't wait to go back and watch and see what the hell happened at the end of that game. So I mean, you're in the mix, right? And that was what this win would do for you, especially with how crazy the year has been in college football and all these close games and all these losses. And boy, oh boy, do you look back now. I know the euphoric feeling for everybody is there, and it's there for me. But thinking back to those first 2 weeks when everybody was critical and everybody was frustrated, of just the reality of, thank God they won those games, man. I know the Idaho game was a little more comfortable, but the Boise game was pucker factor 10 out of 10. Yeah. And you very easily could have lost that game, and it's funny how different maybe everything feels. And it's just the reality that a lot of teams are going through right now, kind of what Oregon went through early in the year. Bama barely survived today. Georgia didn't look great. Oregon hopefully got their clunkers out of the way early, and thank God they survived, man, because this win meant that much more with the fact you're undefeated, and you're one of the few left undefeated this year.
Dirt, obviously this game is back and forth all the way through till the very end. What surprised you the most that Oregon was able to do, or frankly decided not to do in this game, that you think helped them win?
I honestly, going back to the first 2 weeks, man, I would say the way that their offensive line played was the biggest surprise to me easily. They had calmed a lot of the nerves from those early performances, and having Poncho at center kind of settled everybody in, and they were functioning at a high level. It was great to see the explosive run game get going last week. That was kind of one of the final ingredients we were looking for from them as an offensive line. But this is dude, it's one thing to block Oregon State and run the ball against them. It's one thing, UCLA is trash. It's one thing to do it against them. it's a whole different thing to do it against one of what is considered the best defensive lines in the entire country. And to me, that was the whole matchup the entire game going into it, is how do you block up front? Can you protect Dylan Gabriel? Can you run the football? You're not going to run for 300 yards on Ohio State, but can it be enough to keep them honest? Can Jordan James break a couple of big runs? And can you keep Dylan Gabriel upright? And now we're on, 3 or 4 games in a row without allowing a sack. I thought they were terrific tonight, and that stood out to me really from the start of the game with the way that they played and the time that they gave Dylan Gabriel. They were outstanding, and I think they have answered and then some any question that anybody had after those first 2 games. And this is all considering, too, man, I don't know when Matthew Bedford's going to get back. You hope it's, at some point. I know he got dinged up again in the bye week, but you got another body that's coming up front that's going to make you a little bit deeper. So the way that they played up front, showing they can do that against an elite defensive line, I think it just gives you confidence no matter who you play the rest of the way that they're going to be able to hold up and you can function as an offense and they're not going to be the liability maybe that some people thought they would be 2 weeks into the season.
Want to ask you, Dirt, a little bit about the road ahead in just a second here. Talking to Andy Dirt Johnson of the morning show, Dirt and Sprague. Catch him Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 a.m. right here on 1080 The Fan. But Dirt, just zooming out for a moment and kind of being prisoners of the moment, from the hype of the matchup, 2 versus 3, to game day being in town, to the way this whole thing played out. Like we've been here before as Duck fans and alums, where you've been in and won big games and you've hosted game day before, but today just felt like an ultimately special day to be a Duck and to be a Ducks fan and supporter. What stood out to you about the whole day, start to finish it, and what do you think it means for the program?
That's a great question, Buck. I would say, well, one, it puts to bed one of the arguments that just has, honestly driven me nuts over the last, 9, 10, 12 months, however many it's been. This whole notion that Dan Lanning can't win a big game, to me, is one of the dumbest and most ignorant things that has ever been uttered in a sports conversation.
Well, you can't say it anymore, can you?
You can't say it anymore, man. He's been a head coach for 2 years.
Yeah.
Let's take a deep breath and realize this dude's been a head coach for 2.5 years. This isn't James Franklin, who loses to Ohio State and Michigan for a decade straight, and you want to say, hey, he can't beat the best in the sport. That's fine. He's been a player or 2 away from beating truly elite teams. He has 5 losses in his career, and 3 of the 5 have come to teams who went undefeated in the regular season, one of which won a national championship, and the other one, or 2 of them, came to a team that played in a national championship. So this guy has been right there. He's been knocking on the door, and I think tonight solidified why he is the right guy to have. And by saying that, I mean, the reality is with Nick, you look at all the all-time great coaches, and the one thing that they have in common is they have the most talented rosters in the country. Nick Saban is a brilliant coach. How many times did Nick Saban win a national championship and you looked at them and said, that's not the best team in the country, but Nick Saban sure got him over the top. He has the best team in the country every year because he's an elite recruiter and he brings in the most talent. Look at tonight's game, man. Dylan Gabriel was incredible. He was the true X factor that we thought he could be in the offseason. Dan Lanning brought him in. You don't win it without him. Look at Derek Harmon and the way that he played, the fumble that he caused on that second drive after you got hosed on the no interception. He was a transfer guy who was massive. Evan Stewart, the guy we've all been waiting for, transfer portal guy. That is what is special about Dan Lanning, is that without those pieces, you don't win that game. And I don't know where you're at this year. Maybe you lose to Boise and, maybe you're 4-2. Talent acquisition is one of his biggest strengths, and he just continues to improve the roster. So I'm just so glad that dumb conversation can be put to bed. I'm sure we're going to move the goalposts, and now it'll be, well, he hasn't won a playoff game. And then if he wins a playoff game, it's, well, he hasn't won a national championship. I'm just glad at least everybody can shut the hell up for a little bit because he just won a big game. But the other one, Buck, I would say, you went to Oregon. I went to Oregon. My time there coincided with a fever dream. My freshman year there was 2007. Chip shows up as offensive coordinator. It's Dennis Dixon.
Yep.
Falls apart late. And then in my senior year, they're playing for a national championship down in Glendale. There used to be a mystique about Autzen Stadium. There used to, and it didn't matter how good or bad the team was. You'd have years where they go 7-5 or 8-4. It was where great teams went to die, as Lloyd Carr said in 2003. And not that Autzen has gotten quiet, not that Autzen isn't still a loud venue or an intimidating venue, and they're great at home and all that. Today was different, man. It was just the vibe pregame, and I know a lot of that was Ohio State fans. There was a ton of red in that stadium, and kudos to them for traveling out.
Absolutely.
They were all gracious and kind. But we got done with the pregame show at 2:30. We kind of packed everything up. We're just hanging out for a few minutes. I was probably down on the field by 2:45, 2:50. So we're still talking, what, an hour and a half, hour and 45 before kickoff. And I'm not kidding you, this whole student section was full.
I saw that at least
games
60 minutes beforehand. It was packed to the gills.
Dude, nuts. And that's the way it used to be. Like when I was a student there, you'd line up and you'd have to rush your ass
Run up the hill.
Right? Run up the hill, get your seat, because if you didn't get there early enough, those seats would be gone and you'd be all the way at the top. Like that's the way that it used to be. And so game day was special this morning. I was watching it a bit before I headed down for the pregame show. But just the vibe, the atmosphere, the noise that was created. I've been to a lot of big games there. I've seen a lot of big wins there. That one, if not number one, will rival the loudest and most intense atmospheres. When they were doing Shout, man, the press box is just shaking. And I feel like I haven't felt that in a long time. So I'm hoping that's something that continues because that was awesome to see today.
Dirt, you're now 2-0 against Ohio State. Obviously, Michigan is 3-0 against Ohio State. Who is Ohio State's daddy?
I think Ryan Day's got an organ problem. Are we doing that now? Can we start that narrative?
He can't win the big ones. So
you talk about. Sprague and I debated that this week, where he was trying to argue Lanning had more pressure on him, and I just laughed at him, like, dude, no. If Lanning loses, sure, that the same people will be out saying, well, he needs a big win. That would be out there, but like Ryan Day's in national title or bust category this year,
right.
And he had a ton of pressure on him. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that he has an organ problem. I also will, add this. Every time we play Ohio State from here on out, I think we need to take like a hammer to the knee of our best defensive lineman.
Clearly.
Because there's something about not having our best defensive lineman.
I saw somebody tweet before the game, if we all remember the Kayvon Thibodeau situation, that we're just really psyching our guys up and trying to recreate that exact play for our fallen brother thing. And this was just a chess over checker situation.
That's right. He's not actually hurt. They just decided to sit him for the game. He's going to be back for Purdue. They just didn't feel like they did. Look, you actually missed his presence. I thought that was one of the things that they struggled with defensively. He showed up. They had a hard time at times getting after Will Howard and making him uncomfortable. But credit to those guys for stepping up, man. The young guys played their tails off.
So now as we turn the page, Dirt, and look forward, obviously you got a short week coming up against Purdue. We think that'll be no issue, although it's been pointed out to us that Purdue did give Illinois a heck of a time today. And so, we still have, obviously, the biggest game on the schedule is now in the rear view, but you're still playing for plenty as far as the Big Ten Conference Championship game appearance and style points for the playoff and getting yourself potentially into a bye situation. What are your expectations now for the team after this game, and have they changed at all, seeing what they've done tonight?
I think they have. I think it'd be a lie to say that they haven't. I was confident that Oregon could hang and maybe even win this game, but I think for all of us there was a bit of like, you got to see it. It's hard to get those memories of Idaho and Boise State out of your head until you see a game like this. And the start, the way, not getting the interception, they score, you punt. There was a bit of that like, oh boy, here we go. And then that Harmon fumble kind of changed the dynamics a little bit early on. I said it this week on the show, and I will maintain it. I felt like the winner of this game, this was almost a lock to make the playoff, whoever won it. Because
we were just talking about that. Will told me I was maybe kind of wrong.
Well,
I think you have wiggle room, right? Certainly.
That's what it does. It gives you breathing room.
Exactly. Yes. You have a head-to-head win over Ohio State, so if you end up with the same losses of them, you can end up in the Big Ten championship if there is another team. Hey, maybe Indiana surprises everybody, and they're in there in the mix at the end. But you have that head-to-head win. You have wiggle room. You could drop a game. You're still going to have this quality win. And the committee in their rankings, it's different with a 12-team playoff, but one of the main things that they've been consistent with over the years, even when Oregon was in this spot with Ohio State a couple of years ago, when they lost to 3-9 Stanford like 2 weeks later, was the fact that they ranked Oregon ahead of them despite that bad loss. So head-to-head matters a ton when it comes to ranking. So you never want to put the cart in front of the horse or whatever the phrase is, but this one, I think it gives you so much breathing room the rest of the season, especially with the expanded playoff. And there is zero question that was the hardest game on your schedule, and you just passed that test. And now it's about, can you bring the same energy and can you avoid the letdown? I would just have the Bama-Vanderbilt game playing on loop in the facility the entire week, dude, just to say, hey, look what they beat Georgia. Next week they lost to Vanderbilt. So short week at Purdue. Now we get to see if they can go back this one up.
That's definitely one of those things that I feel like is right in the Dan Lanning wheelhouse of you haven't done anything yet. Everything is still in front of you. And got to imagine that'll be the message going out over the next 6 days. You can hear him every Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m., Dirt and Sprague. Dirt, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure you guys have plenty to chew on coming up this week.
All right, boys, go Ducks.
Go Ducks indeed. 32-31, the Ducks winners. We still have more to talk about on the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. We also need to get to one Dusty Harrah. We'll do that coming up. We'll also hear from Dan Lanning, both on the field and in his post-game. What a day for him. It started early, and it ended with him chest bumping some Barstool bros and screaming at anybody who would get in front of him. Quite the day for everybody from the top of the program all the way on down. We'll continue with it next on the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. But first, Schultze has the game day traffic and weather brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. Very heavy traffic. A late departure for most fans out of Eugene this evening, so beware. It's going to be a slow drive on I-5 northbound out of that area. Some traffic in Albany as well. And beware a smoky I-5 northbound, actually, two right as you approach the Coburg area, and then one possibly going past Salem near the Kubler exit as well. Right now, 58 in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 47. Tomorrow, sunny and a high of 75.
Looking for an unforgettable escape this fall? Discover Legends Casino Hotel, just a short drive up the gorge in Toppenish, Washington, where excitement
.1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. The Oregon Ducks, the number 3 team in the land, improved to 6-0 with a 32-31 win over number 2 Ohio State. A perfect day at Autzen Stadium after what was billed as the biggest game in Autzen history, and the man who was down on the sidelines to cover it for us right here on The Fan, Dusty Harrah. And Dusty, the first thing I ask you every week is, what was your biggest takeaway from being down on the field? And I have to imagine this week it has something to do with noise and your ability to do your job.
Yeah, I mean, that was insanely loud. And I know that it's crazy to look at like Twitter and Ohio State fans and just sitting there and saying they're piping in crowd noise. There's no speakers to pipe in the crowd noise on the field. And it was mind-numbingly loud. I mean, it was one of the most raucous environments. And look, there were a lot of Ohio State fans here.
Mm-hmm. Good turnout for them, for sure.
I would say it was like, yeah. I mean, it wasn't the 60-40 split that people were saying would be there. There wasn't 20,000 fans. But I'd say it was like 80-20. I mean, it was a really large contingency of, or 85-15, whatever. It was a big contingency of Ohio State fans. And so it wasn't just all Oregon fans, but they were packed in and they were loud. And like 60,129, that's a lot of fans, man. That is a lot of fans, and that shatters the record for Autzen Stadium. And it lived up to every bit of the hype, from the crowd, the environment, the build-up, and then the game itself, man. I don't know if you can ask for much more.
What did you notice that Oregon was doing offensively, Dusty, that they seemed to really have Ohio State in a bind, that they just kept hitting again and again and again?
Yeah. I thought it was interesting, right? In that game, we saw, third and short, fourth down where they go for it. They were passing when they should be running. And then late in the game, they started running the football in like second and long, third and long situations. And they just kind of, Will Stein did a great job of keeping Ohio State on their heels. I thought they were hunting matchups to try and get Tez Johnson favorable matchups. And in doing so, it allowed the matchups to kind of be crisscrossed, and Evan Stewart ended up getting some favorable matchups, lining Tez up in the backfield to try and get him on the linebacker, and then that means, a corner is now on Jordan James, who's split out at wide receiver. And you're wasting one of the best corners in college football, Denzel Burke, when he's guarding Jordan James in a pass route. I thought they were masterful in manufacturing matchups that were favorable to them. And that Will Stein, we've seen a lot out of Will Stein, but this may have been kind of his masterpiece. You're not scoring 40, right? There were miscues. It wasn't pretty the entire time, but you found a way to run the ball for 150 yards against this defense, and that's saying something. And it was in a variety of ways. It didn't feel like they rushed for 150 yards. But then you look up at the end of the game, and you're going, whoa, Jordan James goes for over 100 yards again, and they ended up pulling out a win. I thought that 4-minute plus drive at the end of the game, it's huge, man. When you have a team that you're not really sustaining a ton of very long drives over the course of the game, and then you milk over 4 minutes off the clock, 5 minutes off the clock, that was pretty special by that offense on the final drive, even though they just got a field goal out of it.
Talking to Dusty Harrah, you can hear Monday through Friday, Danny and Dusty right here on The Fan from noon to 3. Dusty, I want to flip to the other side of the ball. Obviously, the Jordan Birch injury was something that loomed large towards the back end of the week. People were unsure of what that status was going to be. He doesn't end up playing tonight. What did you notice as far as, you can't make up for someone like that being gone, but this unit, that defensive line unit, does have plenty of depth, and for the most part, they found ways to make Will Howard uncomfortable tonight, even if it's not going to show up on the stat sheet. So how did you notice them essentially replacing him on the defensive line or filling in for his absence? And what did they do different personnel-wise without him there?
Yeah, it was interesting. We saw Marion Winston move inside and play more of a true end and not stand up outside backer, because what we've seen in that rotation has been Mateo Uiagalelei and Tatum Tuioti on the outside playing that edge along with Marion Winston. They decided they were going to move Marion inside, and I thought that's a big task. This is a good offensive line for Ohio State, and I think they played obviously well enough to win, and they held Ohio State to 2 touchdowns under their average for the season. But I think what the equalizer was is they only got home once, right? You only get 1 sack on the game, but they, as you said, they made Will Howard uncomfortable. They got him off of his first read a lot of the time, and they got them off schedule a lot. But I think the bigger factor in this is that Oregon's offensive line didn't allow a sack either. So it's kind of that cat and mouse game, right? Where, you're not getting Ohio State behind the sticks, but Ohio State wasn't making Oregon get behind the sticks. And I think that kind of, they play kind of hand in hand. And I thought the defensive backs, for as good as that receiving core is, and we've seen that heck, UCLA and Michigan State both picked on the side opposite of Jabbar Muhammad. When they needed a first down, they knew it. They were going to go to it, right? They went to that opposite side. I thought the defensive backfield played a really good game for as good as that receiving core is for Ohio State. I mean, yards be damned. They did a really good job of kind of wrangling those guys, because it's not, if it's a win, they're going to get those big plays.
Yeah, it's funny that you frame it that way, because you're looking at the stat sheet and their two big receivers go for 19 catches for 193 yards, and yet it really does feel like the secondary played an exceptionally tight game and did a lot of what was asked of them. It's such a strange thing to say, but that's what you get when you end up with best on best.
I mean, winning football games is really damn hard. And I know there's always going to be people that are going to nitpick, and they're going to find ways to knock this down and say, why did Dan Lanning go for it on fourth down? It didn't need to be this close. But, I think on the flip side of that, we can also look at it and say the analytics finally worked out in Dan Lanning's favor, right? Because the whole purpose behind the analytics and going for it on fourth down is that there's extra opportunities over the course of the game.
Sure.
Right.
And you don't get that one, but what are you going to get down the line? And we can all play the woulda, coulda, shoulda, but they won a very tough, hard-fought game against, I still believe it, it's the most talented roster in college football, Ohio State. They are.
Yeah. I buy that.
The environment played a massive factor. It did. You look at the offside penalties. You look at what the crowd was able to generate. It played a major role. Like the home field advantage, it worked for Oregon. But they're supremely talented. And I think it says a lot about Oregon because, Dave Bartu, I know he was on primetime this week, and he said, the talent gap isn't as big as what people would expect for Oregon and Ohio State. Oregon's a really damn good football team, and they showed it today, even without Jordan Birch, even with Trayshawn Holden spitting in a guy's face and getting run from the game.
Yeah, that's something we're going to have to talk about coming up here. We saved that for a little bit later, but that was horrific.
Not smart.
Yeah, and the fact that made it even worse is that Kyler Casper's not playing, right?
Yep.
So you're looking at the depth of what is a really strong position group, and to make that decision, to make that move,
obviously you're not thinking in that spot, but man,
I feel very bad for Trayshawn Holden for what is coming for him because I have a feeling this coaching staff is not going to love that moving forward. And for him to get tossed out of the game, Justice Lowe had to come in, and he played a big role, and it wasn't really catching the ball. I think if you go back and you look, 14 was making some big blocks on runs in screens that popped for big ones, and that was huge for Oregon. Trayshawn Holden is a great blocker. Evan Stewart also, he may have had 149 yards receiving. He was incredible blocking in the screen game and in the run game too.
Yes, he was. Dusty, does this win validate Lanning?
We knew that this was coming, right?
You have to ask it, man. You have to.
Yeah. We all knew, hey, Ryan Day can't win the big one, right? Dan Lanning finally got one. When you play enough elite football teams, the breaks are going to come your way. And I know that there was a lot of consternation about, the losses to Washington last year, 2 losses in heartbreaking fashion to UW, and it's your rival, and it makes it even worse. I think if you were to ask Lanning or any of his players, they're going to say no. But I think to a lot of fans, it does validate that he can go toe-to-toe with an equally talented roster and not just beat up on teams that are inferior, and you can win a football game. Because the fact of the matter is Ohio State came out with 3 timeouts and plenty of time to move the ball down the field for a game-winning field goal. And his defense ended up holding, right? The offensive pass interference, you extend 2 arms, that's offensive PI, right?
It was the right call. I was just glad they made it.
it was the right call, but it was a play where they were in field goal range. They shot themselves in the foot. Them's the breaks. That happens in big games. We were criticizing Oregon for, stupid penalties and turnovers against like Boise State early, right? Doing the same thing against Idaho. Well, in pressure situations, either your team kind of continues to make those mistakes or they rise above it. And I thought on that last play, Will Howard scrambling with 6 seconds to go. I mean, what are you thinking? But at the same time, that was the play where Oregon's defensive backfield made sure nobody was open.
Yep.
And
Anthony Newman said the same thing when he came on. I love that point that you're making. It's spot on. When you needed that defensive backfield the most, you got it.
Yeah, and that is what you look for in big-time football games. Is you look when the games are tight and the margins are thin. When do you make the plays? And it came when it mattered the most. And unfortunately for Will Howard, who had a phenomenal game, I mean, with his legs and his decision-making, I thought Will Howard was really good tonight. But that last play, it cost them, man. It cost them. And I was worried. Like, I was sitting there, and I didn't know if they were going to try to wave everybody off the field or what. But I was on the field as fans were storming, and the officials just kind of looked at each other and were like, yep, this is over. And they took off running. I was like, yep, game's over.
Amazing.
This thing's finally done. The officials are gone, and this is over. And that is a rough way to lose, and I know Ohio State fans are probably melting down right now.
So 2 things for you, Dusty, before we get you out of here. First one is I always like to wrap up with a vibe check because you also are in the unique position where you're right outside the locker room with these guys immediately after this victory. So the first is what are the vibes like around the team right now? And the second is when you kind of bottle up your memories from tonight and what was a super special night at Autzen Stadium, what's going to be the kind of the lasting moment or thing that stays kind of burned in your brain? What's the image that you're going to have, whether it's a play or a moment or something that'll stand out?
The vibe check, vibes were high. The last time there was a one possession game with this team, it was like somebody kicked their puppy off the bridge. It was like Anchorman, and he was in a glass box of emotions after Boise State. They weren't satisfied with the win and a close win. This one, I mean, everybody, and whether it was coaches, players, support staff, they were amped up. And Dan Lanning came in for his post-game interview with me, and the man was drenched in sweat. I don't know if you saw him with the Bussin' with the Boys guys with Taylor Lewan and Will Compton.
Yeah.
He was amped up, and he was celebrating with everybody on the field. And I asked him, because we always talk after the game, and he always says the same thing, 1-0. That's the important thing, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's a good game, a bad game, whatever. If they win, 1-0. I asked him 1-0, but does this one feel different? And I wish that everybody could have seen his face, because he was going in like he was going to say it wasn't, and he stopped himself. His mouth was open, but no words were coming out. And then he looked at me and he goes, yeah, it is different. This one feels good. This one feels different than other games. And then he also went on to say, there is a time we got to put it behind us, and it's got to be relatively quick. But at the same time, this win felt different. Coach Lanning knew it. The players knew it. And I think there was a lot of those guys that they felt that this one was different, not just for them, their season, the trajectory, but for their coach as well, who's gotten a lot of heat for not winning those close games. And they pulled one out for him. And then the lasting memory, I mean, there's a lot. There really is a lot. But I think if you boil it down to like what's going to be ingrained in my mind from this game was there were so many former players that were on the sideline before the game, that were on the sideline during the game. And, watching those guys live and die with every play and what they would have done. Kenyon Barner was down there. Ed Dixon was down there on the sidelines, and seeing Kenyon Barner doing shout during the fourth quarter was one, because he was finally living out what Chip Kelly would never let them do, right? we would just sing and dance and enjoy and embrace the moment. And then just to see those guys' reaction along with the players' reaction when that game was done and everybody stormed onto the field, that's what's going to be ingrained in my mind, is just kind of the finality of it, and how, whether it was past or present guys, their reaction was all the same. And it was true elation, because that's a big win. It's first top 5 game in Oregon history in Autzen Stadium, and they ended up coming out on top, and they did it in dramatic fashion.
One for the record books, and one that everyone in attendance will remember for a very long time, and obviously fans all over the state as well. Dusty Harrah, you can catch him noon to 3 right here on 1080 The Fan, Monday through Friday. Danny and Dusty, appreciate you checking with us as always. I know it's the end of a very long day for you. Get home safely, friend.
I think, when it's a win like that, it's a lot easier to have a long day and a drive home.
No doubt.
I'm here for it.
Excellent. Well, appreciate it as always. That is Dusty
Right,
Harrah.
well, hey, and one last thing is, Will, what was your prediction on Friday? Will,
The team that had the most turnovers would lose. The team that won the turnover battle would win. That's what I said. Which team won the turnover battle?
The Oregon Ducks won the turnover battle, and it was pretty damn close to that 34-31. I was like, man, 34-31 sounds about right.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
I was living and dying on extra points and 2-point conversions.
Oh, boy.
Because chasing 2, I know, Buck, you probably feel the same way.
We're getting into that in a couple segments. Yep.
There's a little bit of Nebraska where you're like,
oh yeah,
boy. But it ended up working out for the Ducks, and I think all the Oregon fans now are going to say never a doubt, right?
Well, now that we're on this tangent, I had all sorts of flashbacks tonight. The Will Howard, that reminded me of Russell Wilson in the Rose Bowl not being able to get the spike off at the last minute.
Yeah.
And then and then it's just there's so many things that you have the point chasing that reminds you of Nebraska, and then honestly, even though the circumstances were totally different, when they weren't able to stop play to check that what should have been an interception on the first defensive possession, that kind of almost reminded me of the UW game where Dan wasn't able to get his timeout in to get Bo back on the field, and they ran it with Ty Thompson, and it was like it all happened so quick. There probably should have been a stoppage, but there wasn't. Then you just had to roll with it, and all sorts of flashbacks going on in this fever dream tonight, but it ends up being a happy ending.
It was a happy ending, and there were a lot of those moments that you're just like, I can't believe that this is happening. But it happened for both teams, too. And I think, I'm sure the naysayers are always going to be – negative people are always going to be negative, and you guys have probably even seen it right now. But that was a damn good football game for 2 really good teams. And the one thing I'm excited for is that we may see this game again, too. And it'll be on a neutral field. We could see it twice
more. We could honestly see it twice more.
Yeah. And that's exciting to me, because the one thing that was horrible is that one loss would dictate the rest of your season before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think if we see this one again, we're in for a treat, because, look,
both of these teams deserve to be playing late in the season.
Yeah, if Jordan Birch gets back, that makes a difference in this game. That totally makes a difference in this game. If they get their left tackle back, who went out with an injury, and I know Ryan Day said that did not look good, and it didn't in real time. But if they get him back, that makes this game even better. If Trayshawn Holden plays more than a half, this game is exponentially more exciting, and the chess match between the 2 coaches is great. And I thought Will Stein and Chip Kelly unloaded the bag tonight. The T formation from Chip Kelly, the guy who was the king of the spread in spreading you 53 in the third, he goes T formation in the backfield with 3 running backs under center. We saw that from Chip Kelly tonight, and I never thought in my wildest dreams we would ever see that. We saw a lot of really great stuff on the football field tonight, and I hope we get to see it again, and I love that we may get the opportunity to do it.
I hope so, too. Whether you're a Ducks fan, a Buckeyes fan, or just a football fan, I think we can all agree that that was excellent television, excellent theater, and something that we can all hope we get one more time. So, again, Dusty, thank you for your time, and have a safe drive home.
Appreciate you guys. Have a good one.
All right, Dusty.
Coming up on the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show, lots of candidates for our Bellagio's Pizza very best player of the game. We will do that next, but first we'll toss it over to Schultze, who has the game day traffic and weather every 10 minutes, brought to you by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com.
Thanks, Buck. Traffic still kind of heavy out of the Eugene area. I-5 north loosening up, but expect an extra 10, maybe 15 minutes up past Coburg Road out of Eugene on I-5. Clear near Albany, but you are seeing some slowing right around the Salem area as traffic gets further north at this point. Right now, you're looking at 56 in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 47. Tomorrow, sunny and a high of 75.
Looking for a better primary care experience? Well,
Caught. Touchdown. Trayshawn Holden with his 7th touchdown reception of the year.
It's time for the Bellagio's Pizza very best player of the game. Pay attention. Our expert panel will select the very best player of the game. And when you hear the Text to Win cue in the noon hour of Monday's Danny and Dusty Show, you could win a free pizza from Bellagio's.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. There's still football on our TVs. It's going all night, and we're just going to revel in it because the Ducks are victorious. It's been a fantastic day. My youngest son woke up at 5:57 a.m. this morning, which honestly couldn't have been any better because I wanted to watch game day anyway.
Hey,
so I
works
gave
out.
him his little bottle, and I watched some great signs being bandied about. There was... The vibes were immaculate all day. I'm glad that they were riding high in the locker room. Obviously, they were going to be, but I like getting the vibe check from Dusty as well. It's now time, though, for us to get into our Bellagio's Pizza very best player of the game. And Will, this week there are a ton of candidates. There are some obvious, there are some not so obvious, but who is your Bellagio's very best player of the game going to this week?
I think it has to go to the quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. He's
think so,
23 for 34, 341 yards, 2 touchdowns. The most important number, 0 interceptions.
Okay. Yeah.
Did not turn over the ball, which was a big issue the last 2 weeks, especially in the low red zone. Then, yes, exactly what you're talking about, running the football as well. He had 4 carries for 32 yards and a touchdown. Obviously, the big one being the 27-yard keeper on the zone read, getting into the end zone. I loved everything that Dylan Gabriel did in this game. This is why you brought him into this program. This is what you expected him to be this year. A lot of people called him Bo Nix 2.0. He's not Bo Nix 2.0. He's a different player. He doesn't quite have the same arm, but he likes to run around a little bit more and scamper. So using him in that +1 run game of your own that you were worried about Will Howard being involved in and taking advantage of your defense, using your players' skills against the other team. I loved what Dylan Gabriel had going on today.
So making sure you caught that out there. The very best player of the game is Dylan Gabriel.
DG.
Remember that when you hear the text to win cue in the noon hour of Monday's Danny and Dusty show, and you could win a free delicious pizza from Bellagio's. The other thing I want to talk about with Gabriel, I mean, he has been so solid all year, and honestly, for a game where it was probably his least accurate of the season, it felt like it was maybe his safest passing the ball.
Right.
It never felt like anything he was doing had them really in any harm's way, which just, as a fan, just gives you this sense of like comfort where you're not like worried about him. And the last couple weeks, even against opponents where the Ducks clearly were head and shoulders above them from a personnel standpoint, Gabriel could still find spots to make plays that he wanted back, and this was not the case. In the kind of game and atmosphere where you can't afford those plays, Gabriel didn't make any of those. And the other thing that I absolutely love is that when it came down to it, we've seen it a couple times this season, but the scamper. I love when he turns on the wheels. I love when it's by design. I love when it's by scramble, but tonight, him using his legs to get in the end zone, it just capped off what was already a really awesome evening for him. I think that he's starting to show us the complete package, and I think we talked about it a little bit throughout the week, but Jeff Schwartz, who we both follow on Twitter, former great Ducks lineman and NFL lineman as well, was saying, we've seen Gabriel have big games. We've seen him as an underdog win that Red River rivalry game last year against Texas. He can do big things in big moments. He can hit the deep ball, which we hadn't seen a ton this year. We had mostly seen B to B plus game from Dylan Gabriel. Very accurate, very efficient, but not an A quarterback, and I think we got an A performance from him today.
I felt like you finally saw him take risks where he threw the ball into 50-50 scenarios. Like he knew, hey, this is a big game, and so for us to win this big game, I have to take a few more risks. Now, that could lead to more interceptions, more issues, but when you're playing a team like Michigan State, no offense to Michigan State, when you're playing a team like UCLA, no offense to UCLA, you're better than them talent-wise, and your talent is going to win you that game if you just don't make mistakes. So it's okay to take that check down to Terrence Ferguson at 3 yards instead of trying the one-on-one matchup to Evan Stewart, because you know that Terrence Ferguson is going to be able to run through a couple tackles. Well, against Ohio State, they have extremely talented players as well. Dusty's calling them the most talented college football roster in all of college football, and I don't disagree with him. They have talent on every position group, and they have guys that will be playing on Sundays in every position
Urban
group.
Meyer, who coached national title teams at Florida and Ohio State, said that he thinks this Ohio State roster is the most talented football team that he's ever been around in his coaching career, including those teams at Florida and at Ohio State.
That's because he hasn't visited anybody on the West Coast. That nobody remembers us over here on the West Coast. That actually kind of pisses me off. That's frustrating.
Well, Schulte, get in here.
No, seriously, what the hell did we just watch? We just watched Oregon beat an Ohio State team that just put 35 points up on Iowa, one of the best rushing defenses in the country. I get it, but watch Oregon football before you make that comment. Come on, dude.
Yeah, he's saying this. He's saying it as he's traveling around. All I'm saying here is, to win a big game like this, you have to take a little bit more. You have to take more risks. They have to be calculated, and you have to be smart about when you take them, who you take them with, and where you attack this defense. And I felt like in this game that Dillon Gabriel attacked this defense, and he knew when he had times to take risks. And I feel like, for the most part, he succeeded on those. The 50-50 ball to Evan Stewart that he throws, where Stewart makes an incredible touchdown catch. The deep throw that he has, again, to Evan Stewart. Right? He took chances in one-on-one situations that you don't have to take against some of the other teams because you'll just win just by being that much better. And he executed on most of them in this game.
Not all was perfect tonight for the Ducks. In fact, there were a handful of things that led me to believe they might not come out on the winning end of this. Dan Lanning says after every game, they've all been wins this year, but he says we always have to go to the doctor, and there's plenty for the doctor to check up on. We will do that coming up next on the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show right here on 1080 The Fan. But first, we toss it back over to Schulte with the game day traffic and weather every 10 minutes, brought to you by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com.
Appreciate it, Buck. Still a couple of extra minutes out of the Eugene area on I-5 northbound. Beware of Smoky past the Coburg Road area as well. I-5 north in Salem and Albany. You're looking at some smokies in those areas, but fairly clear on the highways. 57 in Portland right now. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 47. Tomorrow sunny and a high of 75.
Drive home in the Audi SUV of your dreams at Audi Wilsonville. Now through October 31st, get 0.99% APR for up to 60 months with no down payment on a new Audi Q4 e-tron or Q5e. Upgrade your driving experience with a luxury electric SUV from Audi Wilsonville.
For highly qualified customers through Audi Financial Services. Available on select new, unused 2024 Audi models. Not all customers will qualify for credit approval or advertised APR. Offer ends 10/31/24. Subject to credit approval by Audi Financial Services. Visit Audi Wilsonville for details.
Hey, it's Rob. Our first house, it was old. It had bad windows. After remodeling, I now understand the myriad of positives new windows can bring. Not only do they make our house look so much nicer, but they increase our property value and lower our energy bills. Believe it or not, October is the best month of the year to replace your dingy windows. So who do you call? Window Nation, that's who. Buy 2 windows and get 2 more free. Plus, pay nothing with no interest for 2 years. Call 866-90-NATION or go to windownation.com. 866-90-NATION.
Lowe's knows it's easier to make the right calls when you have the right team. That's why our Lowe's Red Vest associates can help with game time decisions. Plus, use in-store mode on the Lowe's app to find what you need. Under pressure at home and want it soon? Order online by 2 p.m. to get it same day. Same day valid on eligible in-stock items and select zip codes only. Subject to driver availability. Fees vary based on purchase. Exclusions and more terms apply. See Lowe's.com/same-day delivery for details.
Febreze. As a rideshare driver, I love keeping my car smelling fresh and clean. So when I'm driving, I only trust new Febreze car vent clips, now with 3 times greater scent control, because it's that little touch that sets me apart. I can turn the intensity down for subtle freshness, or I can turn it up for when I want lots of scent. So whether it's set to low, medium, or high, with new Febreze car, I know my car's going to smell amazing, which keeps my driver rating right where it belongs. Picking up Oscar!
Auto accident? Let Lafe's Auto Collision Centers handle your claim from A to Z. We pick up your vehicle, negotiate your claim, fix it to pre-loss condition, handle the billing, and drop it off. No wonder a recent survey of Oregonians voted Lafe's the #1 choice for repairs. With pickup and delivery, pre-loss repairs, factory parts, loaners, and manufacturer's recommendations, Lafe's has been the consumer's choice for over 33 years. The law gives you the right to choose who repairs your vehicle. Choose Lafe's, the finest in collision repair.
If a Coors Light is enjoyed in the evergreen forests or on the mountain trails of Oregon, and no one is around to hear it, does it still provide the ultimate in refreshment? There's really only one way to know. So why not grab a pair of hiking boots and an ice-cold Coors Light to find out for yourself? Crack open a Coors Light, Oregon, and choose chill. Chill responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
Gabriel. Pressure comes. It's picked up. Gabriel wants to go deep. He's got Tez. Down at the 10. Touchdown! Tez Johnson! A perfectly thrown ball from Dylan Gabriel. And Oregon ties it up. A kick away from taking the lead.
This is the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
We're rocking and rolling on the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. The Ducks victorious 32-31 over the Ohio State Buckeyes. We do need to get into a couple pressing matters, though, things that Dan Lanning is going to want to clean up.
Yeah, there's a few, and you cannot forget about them. It's a great win. It's the biggest win that you've had in a very, very long time. You won't get another if you don't clean them up.
And I think it's the best kind. I mean, you say this when you play teams that are like, supposed to be your cupcakes, where when you win anyways, and then there's still things you can work on. This is like the best maybe possible scenario because you still got that win, but oh boy, there were a bunch of things that you can't be doing. Special teams has to be cleaned up, whether it's holding, kicking. I guess mainly those two things, holding and kicking.
It was a good snap. That ball should have gotten down easy.
And let me just ask you because I don't know this. I know that when the specialists who hold are almost always either punters or other quarterbacks. What is the incentive to using a punter rather than one of the backup quarterbacks?
What are they doing all day at practice? Like, they don't do anything. This is my experience with like punters and kickers, and this isn't meant to be mean. I love some of my punters and kickers. I remember I had just gotten done with an inside run session, which is just 9 defensive players against 7 offensive players, just running the football. Everyone knows it's run. You're basically blitzing the entire time, smacking each other around. A 15-minute session. I was walking over to get water because I was going into a 15-minute blitz period next, and then I knew I had another 15-minute team session still to go in that practice. I looked out on the track, and I watched our punter and our kicker walking the track on the line, taking their 1, 2, 3 steps, and then dropping the ball to make sure that they dropped the ball in the perfect spot for them to kick it. I just want you to know that that's what kickers do.
They're dialing in their specialized skill just like you're doing yours.
No, they don't do anything but kick the ball. So especially if you're a punter, that's a perfect opportunity to steal reps for someone that you don't have to steal reps for. Like, if you have your backup quarterback over there, that used to be a big thing, right? Remember Dallas, they had Tony Romo do that when he had his fumble?
Yep.
The thing is now you're taking away reps from Tony Romo that he won't get in case...
And that part makes sense to me.
Right, in case your number one guy goes down. That ball gets caught 99 out of 100 times. Yeah. That's just a kid. It's the same thing with a couple of the false starts for Ohio State. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing.
Human element.
It's a big-time game. You got jacked up, and you let your emotions take control instead of taking a deep breath, focusing on your job, having attention to detail, and doing what you need to get done. I would make the argument that your guy that got kicked out, the same thing happened to him.
And I know we got to keep things moving here on the program, but one thing that I think we also need to discuss is that I would love to see, only because this has happened at least one other time, I would love to see Dan Lanning not hesitate to use those timeouts when he has them to get to the bottom of possibly review, to get personnel right if things don't look right. Some people are saying the 12 men on the field was an intentional thing tonight. I don't know.
I don't know.
That's deep.
I doubt that's the case. My point being, that first possession of the game where it looked like Jeffrey Bossa came away with an interception, the Ducks reacted like they knew they had the ball. It seemed pretty clear from the replay right away that at most it was
inconclusive.
But it should be looked at.
Right.
The refs should have done it, but when they didn't, You sitting on 3 timeouts and you have no idea how the rest of the game is going to go. I think you have to use one to stop the game and say, we got to at least look at this.
I don't disagree with you. I think the only reason it wasn't used in that situation is because of the timing of it.
Yeah.
It's the first drive. Yeah. It's like the third play. You've had 2 minutes off the clock. If you lose your challenge and you lose that timeout in that spot.
So let me push back, though. Best case, worst case. Worst case scenario, you're absolutely wrong, and now you have 2 timeouts for the rest of the half.
Yep.
Best case scenario, it's your ball and they don't have 7 points. I'll take that.
That's completely fair. And actually, when you look back at this game, that's like the one deep ball that Ohio State completed.
Yeah, it was a 32-yarder.
Right. So I think that, right, hindsight being 2020, you should call the timeout, you challenge it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. If he goes back and he challenges it and he's wrong and it was a catch and Oregon loses that game, that's the first thing that people bring up on poor clock management because it's not the first time that he's had poor clock management. It wouldn't shock me if he just looked at it in that situation and said,
it's a long game.
It is what it is. I'm not going to put myself behind the 8 ball 2 minutes into the game.
Yeah. And I think the alternate way that I'm looking at it is if you have a chance to get a takeaway on what might have looked like a takeaway, you've got to find out if you got it, if you got the ball there.
Fair.
So let's keep things moving. We'll toss it back over to Schulte for the Ducks game day traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Appreciate that, Buck. We're still seeing a couple of extra cars on I-5 North out of Eugene, but it is clearing up. Do beware. Do see a smoky I-5 North past Coburg in the Albany area as well once you get out of town. But other than that, highway's looking pretty good up to Portland on your way home. Right now, 57 in downtown. The low for tonight calls for 47. Tomorrow it's sunny and a high of 75.
For over 45 years, Pacific Office Automation has been
1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Well, boys, we've had too much great stuff to talk about to give the appropriate scolding to Trayshawn Holden for his misgivings this evening. We'll save that maybe for Ducks Roundtable, but fellas, there was
can't go off about it. I'm just kidding. I'm not mad about it at all. That's a joke.
I'm going to be nicer to him than I think most would.
Oh, I'll be nice enough. It was a really tough moment for him and for the team, and it's something that could have severely backfired for them. Luckily, they escaped with the victory, but it's all smiles here on the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show, because that scoreboard reads 32 for the Ducks and 31 for the Buckeyes, and that is really all we care about tonight. But before we proceed any further, it's time that we hit you one more time with the Ducks Game Day Secret Score.
Ducks Game Day Secret Score.
The Ducks Game Day Secret Score is 496. That's 496. Remember the secret score and listen in the 7 a.m. hour of Monday's Dirt and Sprague, and listen for the cue to text in. If you text in with that number of 496, you have a chance to win the $100 gift card to Laurelhurst Market, more than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. Fellas, lots of game balls to go around tonight. I'll let us each take one here, but obviously we know Dylan Gabriel, the very best player of the game, but who else deserves one from you, Will?
I'm going to give one to Mateo Uiagalelei. He had 5 tackles in this one. 3 of them were solo. 2 of them were tackles for loss. The big one that I'm thinking of is that key third down where he's got a tackle coming down to down block him. He gets skinny through the hole. He's able to make the play on Judkins, I believe is who was carrying the football there. Get the tackle for a loss. He has another one later on. I know it's not really a sack, but hey, you were in the spot when Will Howard fell. He fell because you were pressuring him. That's a young kid. That is a true sophomore who went out and had absolutely one hell of a game. And the other thing that we haven't gotten to mention yet, because there are so many other great things that happened in this game for this Ducks team, you had the biggest recruiting weekend in the history of your program, and you had
Good
those
day to have
5
that going
stars.
on.
Yep, you had all those 5 stars there, and I think the biggest thing when it comes to players like that is, can I play early and can I be developed? And I think Mateo Uiagalelei is the prime example of that. He got to play right away as a true freshman because he earned it, but he has also continued to impress year after year after year. He has 5 sacks on the season right now. He's tied for the lead in your program in 5 sacks, and he's 19?
Yep.
And that shows those 5 stars that they can be the next guy like him. So Mateo Uiagalelei, what a fantastic performance you had today.
Schulte, who's getting a game ball from you tonight?
I'm going sneaky. I'm going with Jordan James. I mean, I feel like his 115 yards were really quiet.
Somehow a quiet 115. Yeah,
I know. He had a big chunk play. Obviously, Dylan Gabriel with that big touchdown run in the first half, or in the second half, excuse me. But Jordan James had a big, I think, 40 or 50 yard run-ish to set up a touchdown or a field goal in the first half. And yeah, just getting 4, 5, 6 yards. Other than that, it seemed every time against one of the best rushing defenses in college football. So Jordan James, my game ball, baby.
And I'm going to go back to someone we talked about almost towards the very top of our broadcast here. For me, it's got to be Derek Harmon. I think the reason why, I mean, it could be so many people. I loved what Evan Stewart did today. I was thrilled. You had to have his performance, especially with Trayshawn Holden getting himself kicked out of the game. But you go down 7-0 after what should have been your ball with the interception, and then you don't do anything with your next possession, and they get the ball back again. If Ohio State marches down and makes that thing 14-0, I don't know how your team's getting up off the mat. I'm not saying they quit. I'm not saying they roll over. I'm not saying any of that. But the timeliness of Derek Harmon to get through the line and make a play that I've never seen a defensive tackle make just seemed like it was so crucial at that moment. He's got to get it for me, because to me, he saved the game getting out of hand potentially.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When I watched that play, as an offensive lineman, my jaw dropped. There's 1, maybe 2 or 3 people that can do that and make that play, and you have to thank goodness that you have that type of player. I said it, Dusty said it, I know you're going to hear a lot of other people really smart in college football say it. You went into the transfer portal and you got 3 big names, and in the biggest game of the year that you had circled, that everyone knew that you were going to care about and was going to be the game of the season, not just for you, not just for Ohio State, but for all of college football, and it was the biggest game everyone was excited for, which was this weekend. You had those 3 players come up and have a big-time performance to help push you to victory. That's huge on recruiting, that's huge on the players, but it's also huge on the coaching and putting them in the position to be successful.
A massive day for everyone involved in the program, from the people at the very top all the way down to the students who showed up before midnight last night to get into college game day. A perfect day to be a Duck. The Oregon Ducks winners 32-31 over the Ohio State Buckeyes. We will run it back with the Ducks Roundtable show on Monday from 7 to 8. But thank you for being with us all night on the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard show. The Ducks winners, undefeated, and possibly number 1 on Monday. Have a great night.
Football season is back, and that means Ducks game day traffic. It's never fun. Isaac Ropp with a friendly suggestion: pull off I-5 at Langdon Farms in Wilsonville. It's the single best pit stop because you can not only bust out the sticks, hit the range, or play around while everyone else is cussing traffic, but if you need a good meal, Langdon's Grill is perfect. Full bar with an excellent game day menu and all the games on the big screens. Outdoor patio seating too. Plan your game days right. Mix in Langdon Farms just off I-5 in Wilsonville.
If you're considering new construction and want it done right and fast by a team that's focused on innovation, collaboration, and creativity, you want Mods PDX. At Mods PDX, we craft beautiful, sustainable, energy-efficient buildings of the highest quality. Our modular approach means your project can be completed faster than traditional construction, and our team of uniquely qualified architectural and trade professionals have the expertise and experience to make your vision a reality. Visit us today at modspdx.com.
It's time to review the top 3 highlights of the day. I'm joined as always by my